Munster come from behind to make the top 8. My name's Mark. Let's talk rugby. Great win from Munster, but both of these teams made this a brilliant game, especially in the first half where it was just 100 miles an hour. Both teams really going after it. You know, it had the real feel of a knockout game, which it pretty much was, because both teams knew coming into this, the winner goes through to the playoffs, the loser potentially not, and that's how it turned out. So Jacob Umaga, who had an amazing first half, like a lot of the Benetton players, but then kind of fell away in the second half. But he breaks through the middle of the Munster defence, but then his long pass out to the wing goes into touch. Sign of the danger, though, that this Benetton side had. And in the opening minutes, they broke that line a few times, but just couldn't, get that final pass to actually get a score. Munster then throw to the front of the first line out. But there's just an absolutely massive cheer as they claim it. And that was a sign of the struggles that they've been having in the line-out recently. But the line-out actually went pretty well in this game. Then both teams at periods holding onto the ball, but defences on top, albeit Munster looked a little bit creaky at times. Benetton, looking to break on the transition as well, and definitely looking at the more dangerous side with ball in hand. But when Munster do finally find a gap, they get over the line. Farrell with a big break into the 22. They then go left out to Peter O'Malley. They move it back inside, close to the line, and then they recycle. Casey puts Crowley through a gap. There's a team review for possible crossing, but the officials decide everything's okay. It's converted for 7-0. Decent start from Munster there. Benetton then attack off the back of a dominant scrum. They go wide to Rhino Smith, who carries well before Munster are pinged for not rolling away. They kick it to the corner. Munster halt them all, but Benetton then spread it. Umaga gives a lovely just cut back pass to Rhino Smith, who just coming like a train, late run from him, brilliant angle as well, goes between the posts to score, and nobody put laid a glove on them, converted for 7 points all. Brex then gets pinged for sealing off the restart. It's straight in front, so Crowley pops it over 10-7. Farrell then plays it on the ground as Benetton put massive pressure on the restart again. So again, swinging back and forth. Benetton decide they're not going to take the 3. They're going to go to the corner. But then Peter O'Malley steals the line out and Munster are able to clear. Benetton then strike from a scrum. Munster much better in this scrum, but Benetton get it out and they move it. Umaga looks to break. Casey's attempt to tackle just kind of bounces off, so he goes on a bit further, and then again he's got Rhino Smith in support, and he's just got gas, and over he goes to score, converted for 14-10, and that one, a little bit too easy from the Munster defensive point of view there. Then just before the break, Coombs plays the arm. He was on the ground as well, it was playing the scrum half, but it wasn't the scrum half. I think it was one of the forwards was in there. And Benetton, they kick long for the corner, looking to, get that extra score before half time to really give themselves a decent lead. But they miss touch and Abrams keeps it in. And then Munster clear off half time, 14-10. Into second half then, Munster maul from line out and Benetton and fringe. They kick it into the corner, go to the maul again, maul going forward, backs come in, and then Barron breaks off to score on the line. Conversion attempt is a little bit scuffed from Crowley. He, at this stage carrying a little bit of an injury, and I think after this one, I think it was Craig Casey then takes over the kicking from there. But it's 15-14 to Munster. And they just got the narrowest of leads at that stage. They then strike again off a solid scrum in their own half. Crowley with a crossfield kick to Kilgannon, who rides the tackle and then offloads to Abrams, and he just has the pace to finish in the corner. Converted from the touchline by Craig Casey for 22 points to 14. Munster on the attack again. Crowley puts in what seemed like, a bit of a hopeful kick maybe in behind. It's gathered, I think, who was it? It was gathered by one of their players, but they collect a Munster chaser at the same time. The Munster chaser is brilliant in this. Offloaded to Albanos, and then he gets isolated, and it is a penalty to Munster. And yeah, it was, just the determination from the Munster players to get there. And I think it was Hodnett who got over the ball to win that penalty. Casey slots that, and it's 25 points to 14. Munster then working into 22. They're going through a lot of phases. So Crowley drops back into the pocket, but his drop goal attempt is off target. Then he's involved again. Lovely kick in behind. Benetton tried to take it quickly, and I think the ball actually went dead, but they get a bit of a layoff because they took it ahead of the mark. So we come back for the line out, and then Munster infringe and are able to clear from the penalty. But you do feel they need to be down the other end, because time is running out for them. And, again, this is basically a winner takes all matchup, in the final round. From here, then, Benetton do actually manage to get up into that Munster 22. They kick to the corner from a penalty, and you feel like they need to score because there's just over 10 minutes left. They claim the line out, and I think they went to the back. Then they drive towards the line. It goes down just before the line, but then Bernasconi comes out of that, and then he's able to dot down on the line to score. Umaga with a great conversion for 25 points to 21. Game on. They've got a real chance now to get out of jail and beat Munster away for the first time, and also qualify for the final 8 and the Champions Cup for 2 years on the bounce. But now it's Munster's turn to kick to the corner from a penalty. They go to the line out again. Byrne claims it in the middle. They're halted about a metre short of the line, but then Wycherley goes off the back and over to score. Conversion is missed, 30 points to 21. Then Conor Murray comes on for Jack Crowley, who's been hobbling around, and he kind of pulled up a little bit, chasing a kick back there, and just kind of kicked it out because, he didn't look good. So hopefully, fingers crossed, there's nothing too serious for him. Benetton then win a penalty. They've got a chance to make it a one-score game, but Umaga is off target from the tee, and you feel like, their hopes of making the playoffs really ebbing away at this stage. Munster then able to run down the clock for a 30-21 full-time score. So Munster into the playoffs, and Benetton, they've missed out. So let's have a look at the stats, and then we talk about each of the teams. So let me pull the stats up here on the official site. So there we go. Okay, so on attack first, 4 tries to 3, so it's a bonus point win for Munster. I don't think it's going to have make a whole heap of difference in terms of where they finish, because it's a case now of either the Scarlets win or they don't, and Munster are going to, finish probably 6th if they don't. But yeah, they got the bonus point anyway. It does give them that little bit more breathing room, certainly, but the win was the most important thing out of this. Possession then 60% to 40, so Munster dominating the ball, especially in that second half. First half was more even. Clean breaks then 6 for Munster, 9 for Benetton, but a lot of Benetton's breaks came in that first half, and weren't able to convert enough of them really to build up. They needed to build up a sizable lead going into that second half, because Munster were always going to produce a bit of a purple patch themselves, and Benetton just didn't have enough of a cushion. And then once they had to chase the game, it felt like, Munster definitely in control. Then defenders beaten, clean breaks. Oh, did we do that already? See, I'm not even remembering now. 6-9. Oh, we did, because we just talked about it. Defenders beaten 15-22. So Benetton, again, with more defenders beaten, but, conversion rate slightly better for them, but not able to convert the clean breaks into enough scores. Offloads then 10 for Munster and 8 for Benetton. Both teams looking to keep that ball alive, move it, especially in the first half where it was just constant play. There was very few breaks in play. Second half a little bit different, few players going down with injuries or just really tired because of the effort both teams put in. Onto defence then, territory 56% to 44%. So Munster not only with most of the ball, but playing in the right areas of the field as well. Number of tackles 79 to 151. Missed tackles 22 to 15. So Munster down at 70% tackle. Definitely going to have to improve on that. Benetton, decent side with ball in hand, and they can make you miss those tackles, and they can make breaks. But if Munster tackling at that level against some of the top teams in the league who not only can make the breaks but can finish them, more often than maybe Benetton would, that tackle success rate is not going to be good for Munster. Benetton with 83, which is decent. So it's round about that kind of pass mark, just below. Turnovers 1 then, 5 for Munster, 6 for Benetton. And it's that ebb and flow again of the game. Both teams coming up with big turnovers, and the likes of Byrne, O'Mahony, Farrell for Munster, and then on the Benetton side you had Brex and Menoncello, that brilliant centre partnership that's sadly going to be broken up at the end of the season, at least for Benetton. All of those guys really competitive at the breakdown, plus about at least half of each of the teams as well in there, and Hodnett as well for Munster too. Kicking then, 7 kicks retained from Munster to 3 from Benetton. Both teams very competitive in the air, but Munster getting the lion's share of that, and that really worked out for them as well. There were a few times when they went to the air where it was brave, because if Benetton had got that ball, you feel like, again, if they break from that kind of position, they're probably in behind and they're scoring. But, Munster, very brave with it, and also, the player under the ball, very solid. Penalties then, 8 penalties conceded each. Not really massive pressure on either team in terms of giving away tons of penalties in a row. There was no kind of signs of maybe either team getting a yellow card, at least for persistent infringement. So both teams doing well to keep it in the single figures. Onto players then. So tries, Tucker Abrams 1 for Munster, each obviously individual scores for Munster, and then Ryan Smith with 2 in the first half, but very quiet in the second half. He did look to make breaks, but Munster kind of clamped down on him earlier and prevented him from building up any momentum. Successful carries then, Alex Nankerville with 7. He was excellent in that midfield for Munster. Himself and Farrell beginning the beginnings of a decent partnership there, I feel. Then Lorenzo Canone with 5 for Benetton. Clean breaks, Peter O'Mahony with 1 for Munster, so fair play to him. Potentially his last home game for Munster down in Cork, and good to see him featuring on the stats there as well. He had a decent game. Ryan Smith with 4 for Benetton, but again, most of those in the first half. The Defenders beaten, Alex Nankerville with 4, and Ignacio Mendy. Sorry, I thought that was Brex. It's Mendy, so it's just Ignacio Mendy with 5. Again, kind of like Smith, he was decent in the first half, but like most of his team, kind of fell away in the second half. Then meters made, Tucker Abrams 83, Ryan Smith with 86. So both of those guys, just eating up the ground with ball in hand. Offloads then, Jeremy Kilgannon with 2 and Mendy with 3 for Benetton. Onto defence. Number of tackles, Ty Byrne with 9, Benetton doing what a lot of smart teams do in making the best jackler on the opposition make the tackle rather than be the second man in. And then Zuliani with 20 for Benetton. So, no lack of effort for Benetton throughout the game. Just kind of ran out of steam really in that second half. Turnovers 1, then Judd Hodnett with 2, and then Menoncello with 2 for Benetton as well. So let's chat about the team. So first of all, the Benetton team, they've had a great season, but they've at the same time they've had some kind of really big highs and really big lows. Getting nailed on a couple of occasions and conceding a lot of points through the league and in Europe as well. Then, in the Champions Cup, being able to beat, first of all, Bath and then La Rochelle to qualify for the knockout stages, which was absolutely brilliant for them. Unfortunately, won't be there again next year. But, it's, in terms of the season, like there's been some really good stuff from them, but they didn't have that consistency that they had last year. And I think that's what kind of cost them in the end. But at the same time, they were thereabouts the same as last year. Because remember last year, it was the same thing. They came down to the final game and it was a must-win game. It was against Edinburgh. They performed that day and they qualified. Whereas in this one, same deal, but they're away from home. They performed the first half, but not in the second half. So at least they made a better fist of it than Edinburgh did last year. But Edinburgh have made a better fist of it than them this year, unfortunately for them. So, an okay season for them, but certainly, would have hoped that they would kick on a little bit from last year, and we didn't really see that. So let's, with players leaving now, let's see how they go next year. Then on to Munster. So, the worry before the game was the set piece. They, very good in the line out all the way through. Under pressure early on in the scrum, then kind of turned that around. And then when the replacements come on, then Benetton turned it back their way, and then Munster turned it back their way. So, pretty even overall in the scrum. But, it's certainly a big improvement in the lineup for them. Then defense definitely has to improve for the knockout stages. Attack is there, but it feels like there's times where they maybe overplay a little bit. They go one or two phases more than they should before they go to a kick. And then by that time, the opposition are set up for it. So gotta get that, either a little bit more penetration, especially against a team like Benetton who are up in their faces in defence as well, or just a bit more variation in their kicking game, or maybe just a combination of the two should give them, a bit more joy with ball in hand. But they qualified for the knockout stages. They qualified for the Champions Cup for next season as well. Certainly going to have to improve, for the Champions Cup next year too, in terms of just being competitive in the knockout stages. But, it's pretty good that they've got there because, there were points during the season where you weren't sure whether they would or not, kind of, and maybe they could have ended up the way that both Connacht and Ulster did, kind of falling away at the end of the season. But two big performances and big results in the last two rounds, got them through. Now they're on to the playoffs. Can they actually, perform away from home and cause an upset maybe? And from there, then once you get into a semi-final, everyone has a fair shot, I think, from the semi-finals on. But there's one other team to talk about as well. They weren't even playing today, but they qualified for the playoffs as well, and that's the Scarlets. So because of results in the other games this evening, it means that Scarlets have qualified at the moment. I think they're sitting in 8th place. Munster up there in 6th. And basically the Scarlets need to win tomorrow to leapfrog Munster into 6th. And if they can get maybe a couple of losing bonus points, they'll finish 7th. Otherwise, probably looking at finishing 8th. But either way, it's been a great season for them as well. So, absolutely amazing. And, you've got to give some, real credit to the coaches there as well as Scarlets, because last year, again, we talked about it, where played really nice, attractive rugby, but too many times just teams are able to blow them away in the last, 30 minutes of games. This year, a lot more steel in them. Just, again, give credit to Dwayne Peel and his, coaching staff there as well to be able to do that. And now they've qualified for the knockout stages and for the Champions Cup next year as well. So, brilliant for them. And you wonder now, though, tomorrow, we talked about it in the preview, is there going to be that little bit kind of relaxed feeling from them that, we've qualified, and maybe just the intensity will be a little bit down for them, and maybe that's going to play into the hands of the Sharks. We'll have to see that though, after tomorrow's game. But brilliant for them themselves, and Munster qualifying after this result. Poor old Benetton not qualifying. And it's hard, honestly, it's hard being a fan of the URC. And when I say that, I don't mean just being a fan of a URC team, but I'm a fan of the URC, which means I'm a fan of pretty much every team in it. So, I'm happy for the teams that are doing well, but I'm also sad for the teams that aren't making it. But only 8 teams can make the playoffs. And it meant that, we came into this weekend with, 4 teams already definitely qualified. The Stormers almost certainly through as well. But then we had 5 other teams playing for 3 places, and 2 teams were going to be disappointed. And yeah, I feel for those 2 teams there. But this is a great game of rugby. Well done to Munster qualifying. Well done to Scarlets. And I'm not going to spoil the results of another game, but well done to the other team who qualified. If you're a fan of them, you know who they are, because you've already watched their game probably rather than this one. And yeah, so brilliant for those teams. Let me know what you think down in the comments.